Hello, this is Carri from Dristhi Yoga Teacher Training, and today I will be talking to Sarah Malini about Ayurvedic yoga. She has an upcoming Ayurvedic yoga teacher training, and I just want to know a little bit more about exactly what that means. So let's get her on and we will check in and talk to Sarah. Hi, Sarah. I see she's there. Go live. Here we
Hi,
are. Good morning.
good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I just want to choose an entertaining filter for today. See?
Oh, nice. I don't know how to do fancy things like that. Okay, so first, before we dive in, oh, I see that rainbow. Before we dive
Yeah.
in, I'd like to talk a little bit about where we know each other from, which is, I think I met you in 2012, probably in Philadelphia at Dhyana Yoga, which is still to this day one of my favorite yoga studios of
And
all
it's still
time.
there.
I know, and it's amazing. How long has it been there now? I wish John or Deanna were here watching, but maybe they can catch the replay. So, and I don't think I've ever told you this before, Sarah. The first time I remember seeing you was in practice. It was in John's class, and you were in a scorpion handstand. And I
Of
was like,
course.
holy cow, who is this chick? She is amazing. And I don't think I ever told you that story before, but that was my very first memory of you.
Oh, that's so sweet and makes that's just like so my personality.
Yeah, that's probably why I'm drawn to you. So let's talk for a moment about not just Ayurveda, but Ayurvedic yoga and what exactly that means. But first, let's get a little bit about you, your history with Ayurveda, because you've been through a few different Ayurvedic programs now. And so why don't you just give everyone a little background about that?
Sure, yeah. So I have been on the Ayurveda path since 2013. I kind of bumped into it when I was in India one year. It's so funny. I went to the doctor with my friend. He was going to see a physician in Delhi, I think. And we had stopped at a bookstore on the way, and I just picked up this Ayurveda book and was like, I think there was a dosha quiz or something, and I was just going through it. And then it's funny, I came back to the United States, and then like Ayurveda just kind of exploded in my life while I was practicing and still teaching yoga. And so I've been through a lot of schools. I took a 1 year program in New York in 2013, and then I took another, and then I went to India to see if to like see if my knowledge lined up with reality, and it didn't. So I was like,
You're like,
okay.
oh, I need another program.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna like kind of shadow at an Ayurvedic ashram in Kerala, which I did. And I was like, I didn't even know what they were talking about. I didn't recognize like any words. And the way that I'd studied Ayurveda in New York, like didn't prepare me for the actual practice, the clinical practice. I was like, okay. So then I went back to the United States. I found a program, another program that was 2 years that was going to turn me from a counselor into a practitioner. And I did that for 2 years, and then I went back to that ashram in India to see how my education lined up, and I was still really confused and still didn't know what they were talking about. So I was kind of disappointed, and I started looking around in India for programs that I could join because I was like, maybe I should just stop trying to study in the United States. But there's like prerequisite for a lot of the programs I found you had to speak Hindi fluently, and I didn't. I was like, well, I don't have time to do both of those simultaneously. So I came back to the U.S. I took another summer. I did a 1 year mentorship to try and like rarefy my practice to be like a more functional clinician. And when I graduated that one, I still didn't feel like ethically prepared. And because like the theory of Ayurveda and then the practice with actual people is just so different. Um, and and then I did a summer program to help find clarity, and that didn't help. But then from that summer, I ended up meeting my now teacher who I've been with for 2 years, and now I feel like since meeting with him, he kind of I wouldn't say encouraged because it was mandatory, but he encouraged us to study Sanskrit and to be able to read the texts ourselves and to be able to like go. And he was the first one who kind of took me to the classical texts, which I was sort of shocked by. I didn't realize that's what I was missing. But in every one of those schools, I was like, where are you getting this information from? Like, because it's not a comfortable place to work from, especially like in healthcare, where you're just like trusting what one person said and there's no referencing. And so once I found my teacher, I realized that that's what I was missing. I was like, where is this information coming from? Like, who said? And now my teacher sent us back to the Bruhat Trayi and the Lagu Trayi and all of these Ayurvedic texts and really clarified for me that like, if we're not going to the text, there is no, you cannot have faith in what you're saying. And of course the yogic text, like the exact same thing. Like one of the elements I'm going to be bringing up in this 30-hour course coming up is like, we're going to go into the Yoga Sutras. We did this a little bit in the restorative class. We just kind of touched on it, but you know, like the way the Yoga Sutras clarify how you get correct information and what is correct knowledge. And one of those three things is scriptural text. So if the education doesn't include that, it's not necessarily going to be reliable knowledge. So anyway, that was like kind of a super tangent, but that's kind of been my path. So I ended up with this current teacher of Ayurveda who kind of reawakened the sense of studentship in me. And then that transformed my practice and teaching as a yoga practitioner and teacher, which had kind of been awakened by a yoga teacher I'd studied with and starting in 2015 named Andre Lapa from Universal Yoga, because he also was like, we really need to be more critical and use yukti. Like, what is this practice asking of us? We're not just dogmatically doing postures. And he started to take us through the text and have us break down like what is actually being asked of us in yoga. And then when I found my Ayurveda teacher who was kind of doing the same thing, it kind of created this rainbow effect in my mind. And like, I was like, oh, we could do this at the same time.
So it sounds like, well, first of all, that your journey has been just like anything, not very linear, right?
No.
It sounds like and you're quite the seeker, it seems. It doesn't sound like you take information for granted, that you hear something and instead of just saying, oh, okay, you're like, really? Why?
I know, I've always been that annoying kid in school, like, oh, cool, why? Oh, why?
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
Weird dog.
Me too. Well, so this course, it sounds like it's the result of what you had been seeking this whole time. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, because, you know, I was taking a business course and the woman who was teaching it was like, you should teach from a place of transformation or pain point in yourself. And I realized that's what I was doing. And so this year I just kind of felt like I let myself slide into it a little bit more. And I think, you know, that was one of the benefits of the tragedy of the yoga industry collapsing, is that I no longer had to try and fit myself into a mold that I never really fit in to begin with. I was like, okay, I just make my own and see what happens. So, which I had kind of been doing, but a little bit more quietly. And so I feel like I have spent so much time trying to clarify things that didn't make sense because I wasn't given the full story as a student. And I find like that kind of broke my heart because, you know, as a student, I mean, there's that student teacher mantra that like, you know, that talks about how there's a relationship that's really important between the student and the teacher. And it's actually kind of sacred. And like, it kind of hurt my heart and trust a little bit to know that like I've had teachers who weren't giving me the full story, maybe because they didn't have the full story, but like it just spoke to a greater lack. And I also felt like the American yoga industry, maybe it's bigger, but you know, like wasn't asking enough of our students and practitioners. Like, you know, there's that thing where I think I mentioned this, we talked about this on the phone, like meet the students where they are. And I feel like that's true to a degree, but you know, someone's not going to learn if they're not asked to rise up out of a place of comfort. And so And that is the practice of yoga. It is a seekership, which means that like the teacher is not coming to find you. You awaken to find the teacher, and you go knock and find the teacher's feet, you know. And so I have been inspired by that. And so, you know, people aren't going to come. I don't expect anyone to come near my feet in any way, but I do feel like I want to ask and challenge the people that work with me to like remember that yoga is about lifting yourself up to meet the education, which is high, and not dilute the education to satisfy a current understanding of the student, because then the information gets diluted and the student ends up where I ended up, which is like confused.
Well, I actually really appreciate that, because in my continual quest for compassion, I should hashtag that, quest for compassion. In my continual quest for compassion, one of the things I have said in the past is to meet the student where they're at. But in thinking about that a little bit more, I sort of feel like in a way that's almost doing the student a slight disservice, because if you meet them where they're at, then maybe you're not really challenging them and asking them to rise up to a particular place, like you said, of education. I feel like we could easily dive into a deep philosophical discussion here, but one of the reasons I was drawn to this course, and let me back up for a moment, because I find that I keep saying this course, and we haven't even said what this course is. So Sarah is starting a 30-hour Ayurvedic yoga program on March 29th that I'm joining as a student. And I'm super excited because I haven't been a student. Well, I mean, we're always a student, right? But I haven't been in an actual training in a while. And I feel I just need some sort of revitalization, some sort of spring renewal. And this program really interested me because I have done some Ayurveda. My 300-hour teacher training, the first portion of it was actually in India at an Ayurvedic, I don't know ever what to say, a hospital? Is it an Ayurvedic clinic, I guess, on an island in Kerala. So this is actually where Sarah Walsh and I met. And then Sarah Walsh and I went on to found Dristhi Yoga Teacher Training. So Sarah and I met on this island. I used to joke that the island was kind of like Shutter Island, because there were like 28 students who were living in this Ayurvedic treatment facility, along with local Indians who were there getting their Ayurvedic treatments. So it was an interesting time, and I used to joke that it was like Shutter Island, because, you know, we were on the teacher training and we couldn't really leave, and sometimes you wanted to dive off into the water and swim away. But anyway, so I have some exposure to Ayurveda. I've also done an Ayurvedic course online, but what interested me about your course is it definitely seems to go beyond just another dosha quiz. Like, we're learning way more than just about Pitta, Vata, and Kapha. So I have a question for you. Would you say that this course is suitable for beginners, or would they have needed to have some sort of background before diving into this course?
No. So one of the things I aim for when I'm teaching is create a true foundation. So, and sometimes it's easier for people who have actually no experience, because the process of unlearning something is really painful, you know, because it's like there is attachment and identity that comes with the things that we like, you know, and we end up protecting our previous knowledge. At least I find I sometimes do that. And so people who have no experience don't have that, like, they don't have to break something to build something. So it's actually, and it works for anyone. Like, I was just working with a client one-on-one, like in yoga, teaching him the way that I'm going to be teaching this course. He had zero experience with asana. He didn't even know it's called asana. You know, it's just like he found me on the internet. And we've been working together for 2 sessions. So it's like 2 hours. And his whole practice is different. Like, because when you work with Ayurvedic principles through the darshan, like the teachings of yoga, like people can get it, because Ayurveda is to be embodied. You know, my teacher says this all the time. It's like, if you learn Ayurveda and you don't put it into action, it's kind of like a sin. You know, like it's to be used. Same with yoga, it's to be done. So, like these practices really work, and you don't, like, he's not really learning the vocabulary, but I'm using it, but really casually. You know, I'll say things like push this way with this energy, like with a push down and forward with a little bit more effort, or, you know, light, soften your hands, or, you know, all these things. So it's really for like, so, and this is where I feel like you meet the student where they are, because someone who studied Ayurveda or someone who studied yoga will hear this and they'll be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing with the prana. Versus someone who doesn't know what prana is, they'll just do it and then they'll discover prana. So that is kind of how I feel like you can meet someone where they are, because there's layers to the information. You'll hear it at the layer you're in, but the information was never false or partial, you know?
Well, after our last conversation, I went back and reviewed some of my, what do you call the two opposite things? The moisture, the
the gunas.
The gunas, which that's going to be a part of your course, right? Because obviously I need a refresher. I hope I get a refresher on the gunas. But you were saying something interesting last time we talked, that the gunas are really the way to like delve into Ayurvedic, learn their qualities that we can actually, they're tangible qualities. So can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah. So dosha, like the thing that's a problem with a dosha is that a dosha is like a substance that's a collection of other substances. So you're never going to, I was talking about this with a friend of mine about something else altogether. Like, you're never going to change the thing that's the result. The only way to make change is to change the things that created that result or created that effect. So if you want to engage with dosha, you have to figure out what they're made of. And not all vata is made of the same gunas, because there are so many gunas of vata and so many dysfunctions that can come from vata, and same with all the other doshas. So you want to figure out specifically like what's the issue, you know, because you can have a vata imbalance and it can be mostly because of dryness. You can have a vata imbalance because it's mostly because of coldness. You can have a vata, like, and those two people experiencing vata imbalances will be different. And so the chikitsa, the treatment, would need to be different. And so to think that all vata is the same and all pitta is the same kind of puts us in a really generic practice of Ayurveda, and also a really general practice of yoga. So so instead of focusing on the dosha, we're going to focus on what makes the dosha, and we'll start to pay attention to the gunas, because you're not going to be able to walk out into the world and be like, oh, it's kapha outside, because that's not what you're really seeing. You're seeing wetness, you're seeing humidity, like head coldness, you're seeing heaviness, you're seeing stickiness, and you're identifying that as kapha, as like a summary. And so, but you're never going to be able to reduce kapha. You're reducing moisture or heaviness or whatnot. And
Yes.
so, yeah, so in this
You're
course, that's what
reducing the quality.
yeah, and so it's quality that is the answer. So we can put that into asana, because like I was saying last week, like asana is like low stakes, you know, like worst case you fall on your nose like in chaturanga or something. Like it's just like you're not going to kill yourself. And it's a really great microcosm for how you can engage with the world. And then you can actually take yoga off the mat, because if you can see guna in action on the mat when there's so much stable stuff, right? The mat's always the same. It's always you. In this course, it's always going to be the same time of day. Like, you know, like the variables are really limited. So it makes it really easy to start to highlight these nuances, and then you can start to see them everywhere, and then change kind of is possible. And so we're focusing on the gunas, because that is what the senses interact with, and it's through the senses that you engage with the mind. And so that is how you can use the body to affect the mind. And the thing that's really cool about breath is that breath is both really subtle, it's sukshma, and it's really gross, really stula. So breath can engage with the subtle gunas of the mind, sattva, rajas, and tamas, and breath can also engage with the 20 gunas of the body and the environment. And so it's through the breath you can create this amalgamation that unites or separates the body from the mind, and also the environment, because that's the other thing that yoga, it's important to remember with yoga and in Ayurveda, is that like we are not an island. So we have to not just create synthesis between our minds and our bodies, but we also have to create synthesis between our minds, bodies, and the environment. Otherwise, we're yogis, but we're assholes, so we're not actually yogis.
I can be an asshole.
Yeah, me too.
So it sounds like, and I'm sure some people watching are like, what is all this? What is all these words? I don't even understand what she's talking about. And that's why you should come to the course, so you can learn and dive deeper. But it sounds to me like this course is a little more about applying Ayurvedic principles into your actual asana practice. So we're not just learning and memorizing qualities and memorizing characteristics of a dosha, but we're actually learning how to apply this science into our asana practice, which is really intriguing to me. Like I said, to me, it's the perfect time for this much needed revitalization, which, by the way, we obviously just had spring. I think everybody knows that. Is that kapha season?
Yeah, so perfect to put a little bit of fire into our lives to burn some of that extra liquid. Yeah, unless anyone's watching in like Australia or something, and then they're moving into Vata and Pitta season. But yeah, exactly. So this course is not, there's no memorization in this course unless you want it. I use all the vocabulary constantly just to make it kind of normalized, but I define everything. And it's like I said, like I don't want to dilute the information, but I also want everyone to understand. I've been in a lot of classes where it's only in Sanskrit, and I'm like circling words I have to look up later, and I won't do that again, because like I'm teaching from my own experience, which means like all the things that like made me feel like I'm drowning, I am not going to do to other people.
Hey, there's Bruno. I think Bruno just joined.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Bruno.
Hi, Dhyana Yoga's back.
Bruno, we were talking about Dhyana Yoga earlier, John and Diana. So happy that you're here. If anyone has any questions, certainly type them in the chat. I probably should have said that 20 minutes ago, but hey. Let me see. Do I have any other questions? The course starts March 29th. It's 30 hours, about 3 weeks, and I'm excited to delve in as a student. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. We get to come to your restorative class, so that's like an extra bonus.
Yeah, so it was originally going to be 25 hours, and then I got this extra class included. And what's cool is that because the way that when I teach the practice, so it's like lecture and practicum. So every time I give an asana class, it's going to be an exact like physical representation of what we're talking about or have talked about. But it's usually vinyasa yoga. So, and vinyasa yoga usually requires more like lunar energies put in or mixed in a variety of ways, like through the way that we're doing breath, through the way that we're doing pranayama, through the way that we're paying attention to our gaze, to our mudras, like our hand positions, etc. But then also restorative yoga, and this is what I talked about in the workshop last week, was like tends to be a little bit too inert, a little bit too much of the gunas of kapha. And so it also doesn't create transformation. So I'm really excited to have vinyasa classes that often will need kind of artistic implications with ta qualities, with these like lunar, heavier qualities, things that people often associate with kapha, but it's not actually kapha. And then, and then also in the restorative practice, we need actually some we need some solar, or otherwise we're just kind of sleeping. But telling ourselves we're practicing yoga, and this is what I'm talking about from the Yoga Sutra, is that like there's these definitions of misunderstanding and wrong knowledge. And one of them is like when we put words on top of something that's not happening, it's called verbal delusion. So if I go into a restorative class, it's telling me I'm restoring. But if I did not actually restore anything, I was just sleeping, which is one of the one of the forms of wrong knowledge, like sleep. So, you know, so we're going to try and do what Rumi says, do not go back to sleep. And we can kind of space out in really
I like what you say about putting the ha in your tha and putting the tha in your ha, which, by the way, your Sanskrit pronunciation is impeccable.
I don't know if it's impeccable, but you can thank my Ayurveda teacher who made me take Sanskrit. I've been in Sanskrit for like 2.5 or 3 years now. So
That's
I'm
amazing.
trying.
Maybe you could have a Sanskrit course next.
Oh my God. But
All
there'll
right,
be
so
Sanskrit in this program too.
What was that?
There'll be Sanskrit in this program because we'll always be chanting mantras at the beginning and the end. So I'll describe what they mean and break down some of the words, because one of the other things I struggled with, you know, is that like I'm not very good at like bulk memorization or rote memorization. I really need to be able to just figure it out. And so when we're going over the mantras and any Sanskrit word that, you know, this is applicable for, we're going to break down like what the word is made of, because a lot of the times yoga, like Sanskrit language, is compound words. Like Ayurveda, for example, is actually 2 words, Ayus plus Veda. So then you can figure out what it means. And that's why I talk about ha and ta equals yoga, because it's really like, it's actually telling you what to do in the title. You know, active plus passive, balance plus, you know, equals yoga. And with Ayurveda, Ayus means longevity or life, and Veda is knowledge. So Ayurveda is the knowledge of longevity or the knowledge of life. So it just like lets you know what you're getting into, and it creates like a better relationship, you know, because it's not memorized.
It sounds like a math equation.
It is. I mean, I always wanted to be a math person. I'm not. So I just try and turn everything I can into like a math or science.
Well, after all, it is a science. So.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm excited to join. It starts March 29th. Again, 30 hours, 3 weeks. And I'm just looking forward to diving in as a student, but also with you, because, gosh, like I said in the beginning, Sarah and I met in 2012, but we haven't seen each other since. And
I know.
will say that's one of the beauties, as you know, the pros and cons of this online yoga age is that, you know, it can be annoying, but at the same time, I'm getting to see you. You live in California now, I believe. And I live in Texas, which is why sometimes you might hear a little Texas accent slipping out. Ayurveda. I'm going to learn from Ayurveda. All right. Well, actually, how do people find you? So I know you have this Instagram handle, you have another one, and then what's your website?
Yes. So this Instagram handle is like my work and personal. So if you want to see pictures of my husband and my cat, that's this one. Also Ayurveda stuff. This is Sarah, S-E-R-A, Melini, M-E-L-I-N-I Ayurveda Yoga, Ayurveda And then that's why you couldn't tag me. Apparently Instagram said I had too many periods in my name. So I don't know, so random. But anyway, and then the other one is Yogavahi, Yogavahi Ayurveda, Ayurveda. This is like a real pop quiz. I'm like, what are my names? And then my website is www.yogavahi.com, Yogavahi.com. If you want to register for the program or you want to schedule a clarity call with me, you can just send me a direct message from here, or you can go through the contact page on my website. Or Facebook or LinkedIn.
I know, I'm on LinkedIn now too, just trying to do something different, you know. Tell us real quick what Vahi means. What is Yoga Vahi?
Yeah. Okay, so a Yoga Vahi is a substance that like brings called this program a Yoga Vahi, like my core company is called Yoga Vahi, because it brings out the qualities in other people that were already existing. So it's like, because it's not me doing anything, it's just me revealing things in you that's already there. So the word is like it potentizes it. Like honey is a Yoga Vahi. Vata is also a Yoga Vahi. That's why Vata can make things worse or not worse, or better, you know, because it just depends on what it's paired with and how. And so that is what is a yoga vahi. And
Cool.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, not just about Ayurveda, but how you can incorporate Ayurveda into not only your yoga practice, but really into your overall life to create overall balance and wellness. So
Yeah, thank you.
so
I'm so
much.
excited for you to join, and thanks for hosting this.
Yeah. I will see you next week.
Yay! Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.